Hello, and welcome to this video all about the amazing Bryntum scheduler component. In this video, we're going to learn how to set up this component with your React projects. So let's get to it. Here in my IDE, I've already created a project with the command npm create vite at latest, given it the project name, and made sure to start things up with the React template. Before we install these scheduler dependencies now, we need access to the Bryntum package registry. So how do we do that? Well, we have two different options. Number one is we could do that for just this one project with a .npm rc file. Inside that, I'll paste this line here. What this says is anything with the namespace of @Bryntum at the front needs to come from this registry here. If I wanted to use Bryntum products on any project throughout my entire machine, I could set this same thing globally with npm. That's as easy as running the following in your console. npm config set, and then providing the same thing we provided in the .npm rc file. Finally, we need to log into the registry by running npm login, and for the registry flag, we'll provide the same URL we did in the .npm rc file. So the username that you need to provide here is the email address on your Bryntum account. However, there is one critical difference. We'll use a ... in the place where the @ symbol usually goes. Nice. Now the password, if you are a trial user, is going to be the word trial. But for those of you with a premium license, you'll want to use whatever password you used when registering in the Bryntum dashboard. With registry access now complete, we can start installing the actual scheduler component along with its dependencies. I'll do that by running npm install @Bryntum scheduler, which is the core scheduler package, and then @Bryntum/scheduler-react. This package, of course, makes the scheduler work with your React application. While that's downloading, I'll open up my package.json file, and let's take a look at what has been added. Indeed, we have the latest version of Bryntum Scheduler and Bryntum Scheduler React installed. In order to lock down these versions more securely and prevent any unexpected changes, we do recommend that you take the little caret off the beginning of each of these different versions and lock them down to a very specific version. So I'll do that now. Also note, if you are a trial user, then this 5.5.3 version here should actually look just a little different. So when you run the npm install command, make sure you account for that. With everything installed and ready, now we can start a development server and see what we're working with. Voila! Here is the bootstrapped Vite and React page. We don't see the actual Bryntum scheduler yet because we haven't put the component to use. So let's do that now back in the IDE. In app.jsx, I've replaced all of the boilerplate code with this bit of code here. All we're doing is importing the Bryntum scheduler component from the scheduler React package. We're also importing still the app.css file for styles, and then we're putting the component to use down here inside of our JSX. I have gone ahead and provided a few sensible defaults in order to get things displaying correctly. Back in the browser, this is getting better. I see some times on the side, we've got this date up at the top. However, we don't have any of the beautiful Bryntum scheduler styles yet. No worries, the scheduler package is going to provide those as well. All we have to do is import them over in app.css from the package. Then I'll also provide just a few body styles to get the canvas prepared. Finally, we can safely remove the index.css file as it's no longer in use. And that means, of course, we'll need to remove its import over in main.jsx as well. Amazing. Isn't this looking great? Now we have a scheduler on the page. It has columns for each of the different hours of the day. It has this heading up here describing what day we're looking at the schedule for. But right now, it is completely empty. It says there are no records to display. So what is a scheduler without any events, right? Maybe we're trying to keep track of rental schedules for an Airbnb clone. Or maybe we're trying to keep track of the schedule of employees at the workplace. No matter what you're trying to keep schedules for, the scheduler component can handle it. Let's head back over to the IDE to see how we can add events. For that, we have two different options. We could use any data that we already have available locally, or we can use the scheduler's CRUD manager to load the data from a remote location. For this video, let's go with the CRUD manager. First, we'll configure the CRUD manager by defining some reactive data that we'll call CRUD manager config. This is going to take a load URL, which signifies the location that the data exists at, as well as an auto load option, which means just automatically load this when we first load up the component. Then let's pass the CRUD manager config as a prop in the scheduler. Lastly, I am getting this warning here that use state is not defined. So of course we need to import that to be able to use it. Next, in order for us to have data somewhere that we can load, let me add a JSON file called data.json in the public directory. In a real-life application, this data would probably come from your REST API. By the way, you can check out our documentation for all the details about what this data format should look like. Specifically, you can look under the docs under Guides, Working with Data, CRUD Manager, and then over here on the right-hand side, you're looking for the Loading Data section. Now, over in our local application, things are actually starting to look really cool. We have some events on our page. Hovering over them gives us more information about the event. We can open up the event editor menu, which allows us to edit the event. We can drag any events around, and a whole lot more. Let's take a look at the data then to see what's actually happening so that we can connect this output with the input. In data.json, we start out simply by returning success true, letting the CRUD manager know that this is a successful response. I'll come back to resources here in just a moment. And then let's take a look at this events property, where we have an array that's inside of a rows property. Each of these items is a new event on the scheduler. In the individual events, we have an ID that is a unique identifier for each event. We have a resource ID, which connects the event to a resource in the resources object above. There's a start date, which, surprise, surprise, signifies the start time, the start date of the event. Same thing for end date. We also have the name of the event, which is the label that's printed on the event there on the scheduler. We're also even able to easily provide icon classes. These are simple Font Awesome classes. I just so happen to have a great Visual Studio Code extension installed that turns this text into the actual icon. But what's actually printed here is fa-mouse-pointer. And then finally, we can also do things like give the event a unique color. Okay, so let's come back and explain this resource ID a little further. As I mentioned a moment ago, this is what connects the event to a resource from this array here up above. A resource simply describes the things that you're making schedules for. As you can tell by the data, this is a list of people. So maybe we're scheduling work shifts for employees or activities for different family members. You'll notice right now, though, that none of these resources make any impact on the output of the scheduler in the browser. Sure enough, Karen, Linda, and Sam are nowhere to be seen here. We only get the events. Let's fix that with the columns prop. Back in app.jsx, I'll define some new reactive state called columns config. Columns config is an array of objects. Each object describes a different column that we'd like to display for each of the resources. This means that we should have a column labeled name for each of the people within the data, and then the field property has the value of name. This is how we connect the column to the particular piece of data from a resource back in data.json. Finally, we're also able to give the columns a custom width. We do, of course, the same thing for age here below. Finally, we need to actually provide this reactive data to the columns prop. Over in the browser now, if I give the page a refresh, we have the resources showing up on the left-hand side and the events associated with each of those people over on the right. I can even sort the names out of the box and do the same thing for age. To wrap things up, this is just a brief introduction of how to get the Bryntum scheduler set up for your React.js application. There is still plenty more that you can do with this amazing package. Things like customizing the context menu when you right-click on an event, or customizing what fields display in the event editor when you double-click on an event. Be sure to tune in to subsequent videos to learn just that. Finally, in order to dive even deeper into getting started with the Bryntum scheduler with some written material, you can check out this React tutorial within the documentation. It's found under Tutorial and React. Also, if you visit the guides portion of the docs, you can get even deeper into what all this amazing component can do. These aren't all necessarily in the context of a React application, but can easily be adapted for your use cases. So from here, the world is your oyster. You now have the ability to make amazing scheduling interfaces in your own apps with the power of the Bryntum scheduler.